Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. I think we have a pretty extraordinary program today. We get a chance to touch base with one of America's great sailors. We also catch up with one of our traveling troubadours, and we'll get to that in a couple of seconds. Up first is five-time America Cup veteran Terry Hutchinson. Terry's going to talk to us a little bit about the America's Cup, AC-37, a little bit about his career. Terry grew up in Annapolis, and the path that Terry blazed was pretty interesting, and there hasn't been many great names in the sport that he hasn't either sailed with or spent time with. I think you'll find it to be an extraordinary interview, and I hope you will stay tuned for that because I think it's very insightful. 16-time world champion and a variety of activities, but I think the devotion to the America's Cup and hopefully the victorious one coming up, I think will be a great story. Second part of the show, we're going to bring you my friend and traveling troubadour, Nagy Mata. Nagy's he's doing the loop right now, and Nagy's gonna talk to us a little bit about his trip. He's all the way over on the west side of Michigan. Spent 3 or 4 weeks getting across on his boat, and we've got some pictures and just a little bit about the trip before he heads down the Mississippi and kind of through Chicago, and we'll catch up with him. The other thing we wanted to mention this weekend is the Cal 25 Nationals here at Crescent Sail Yacht Club. We were going to check in with a couple of our friends, and Paul Nectarline and John McAllister, who are actually involved in putting the nationals together. And we are going to just give you we're going to come back next week and cover the event a little bit more live. It's not something we typically do, but there's some unbelievable Cal 25 sailors. If you want to see racing at its best with a boat that hasn't been built since the late 70s, check in with folks at Crescent and get a chance to watch that race because I think you'll find it to be pretty extraordinary. And we wish all the best to the local sailors who are competing for the Cal 25 Nationals. So up next, Terry Hutchinson, and I think you'll enjoy this interview. Hi, welcome back to Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We're lucky enough to have with us one of America's great sailors, Terry Hutchinson. Terry, appreciate taking the time to speak with us here at Inside Great Lakes Sailing.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate the opportunity.
I want to start with the simplest. You were in town recently up at you got a regatta on a J111.
Yeah, with Ian Hill.
And you had a chance to hit the Harbor Springs and spend some time in the Great Lakes, and you won the 111 division. But the part of the story is that Scott Sellers on another 111 who took second place in your division, won with 2 of his daughters, both in the Chicago to Mac race and the Port Huron to Mac race. They lost to you, I think, by a point. So my question is it fair enough to bring Tiger Woods onto your foursome in a scramble match to win a race? That had to be a lot of fun for you guys in Harbor Springs.
Well, Harbor Springs is awesome, and Harbor Springs delivered up, probably the best Harbor Springs conditions that I've ever had sailing there. Having had the opportunity to race the 52 there in the past and the Far 40 and the Wayback Machine with Bob Hughes, it was great. It was phenomenal, actually, and so, the competition was really good. I appreciate the accolades, but not to ignore the fact that Scott had a U.S. Yachtsman of the Year, Adam Lowry, sailing with him. So I appreciate the compliment, but I think we were just in a match there, and both boats utilizing the one Category 3 spot and then surrounding it with great amateurs. And I think what you find in these classes, when you race with a combination of professional and amateur, you actually win the regattas on the amateurs, not on the professional, because, somebody like Adam, he's a great sailor and quite accomplished, and, everybody knows his resume. And so really it's the amateurs that that the teams have, then their skill sets that really are the difference maker in that race. And I think, like you pointed out, Scott and I were talking in the parking lot about him racing with his daughters in the MAC race. And I mean, anybody who's a father knows that that is just super, super cool, and massively impressed of what he was doing with his daughters, because I think that's something that would be great if we could all aspire to do that. I did an event in 2015 with Catherine. We did a J70 regatta in Annapolis Nude, and we won the regatta, and we ended up winning the trip to the BVI. And I'll never forget those 3 days of sailing, primarily because she was with us and she had a lot of fun. And probably the most notable comment of the entire weekend was, Dad, I think pretty much you're on the boat the entire time, except when you're at home. And we had this unwritten rule of what we talk about on the boat stays on the boat. So she was a great team member at that event, and it's just awesome when you can have that opportunity to race with family.
I've never asked this question, but I want to ask it of you. You are at the top of the sport. You're obviously recognized within the sport. Does it ever bother you that you don't get the accolades and I guess the notoriety from those outside of sailing like other athletes in other sports do?
No,
Okay.
it's not why I do it. I
Okay.
enjoy, I enjoy racing sailboats and winning races, and I enjoy uh, the competition. I enjoy the camaraderie that comes out of our sport. But I can't ever imagine that the what you're describing is the reason to do it. If that was the reason, well, I've lost a lot more than I've won. So,
Yeah.
and I think any athlete that aspires to excel in their sport is willing to you're not being driven by that. You're being driven by something else. So for me, I've never even really contemplated it.
Yeah. No, and it wasn't a question of ego. It was more of a
Yeah.
question of sometimes, you look around the landscape and I don't even think the people that sail at a high level, even in the Great Lakes, recognize what kind of talent's here. And that's been a thread through this show. You
Yeah.
you show up on the dock and there's a guy that's won 8 world championships, and it's just he goes about his business, and that's not typical in a lot of sports that I've covered. That's so I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I think it's cool too. I mean, I think one of the unique things about our sport, or using the golf analogy, is that everybody can relate to golf. People aspire to hit a golf ball like Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy. Whether or not they can is a completely different story.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is those guys can integrate into a crowd and talk shop, and it's the same on the dock. You can. I had so much fun at Harbor Springs because just on the walk to the boat, you'd come across sailors and they would ask me about American Magic. They'd ask me about what we're doing. And I think, doing those regattas and, participating in racing, and be it the J70 or the Southernmost Race Week or whatever the event is at the time, Charleston Race Week, these are opportunities that we can promote New York Yacht Club, American Magic, and what we're doing for the 37th America's Cup, and really, swap some stories about what it's like to sail an AC 75 and some of the experiences that we have.
I think the one line that permeates through a lot of the shows that we've done is that this is a sport where you can be competitive at almost any age.
Yeah.
And I think that changes. Every other sport is not true to that same case. You
Yeah.
might be a champions player at the PGA level, but you don't see a lot of 50-year-old, fullbacks. I understand that
Yeah.
Brady's another anomaly in terms of
Yeah.
football, but we have world champion laser sailors who are 53 years old, and
Yeah.
that changes the sport, obviously.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I actually think, to a certain extent, I mean, it's not so much, in this next cup cycle, there'll be 4 guys on the boat that are athletes beyond anything that we've ever seen before. And then there'll be 4, highly skilled sailors. And that combination is going to be exciting to see how that all evolves and develops. And I think the the fact that, as you rightfully point out, I'm sure we get to a spot in age where the instincts don't fire in the same way. And I, this year so far, touch wood, we've had a reasonably good year so far on the water. but it's taken 18 months to get back to that spot. And it takes you a lot of training and a lot of practice. And, so it's good to also remind yourself how hard the sport is to be successful.
I want to come back and talk quite a bit about America's Cup, but I just want to start with a couple of quick things. You grew up in Annapolis.
Correct.
I think that if you're Jack Nicklaus and you grew up at Scioto, which is next to there in Columbus,
Yeah.
you have some distinct advantages. Obviously, you're a 4-time college All-American.
Yeah.
I can get into your 11-time world champion, those kinds of things. But as a freshman, you're an All-American. 16. My mistake.
Come on, man.
16. That's on me.
All good, Greg.
But my point is, you won. You won as a dinghy sailor, as an offshore sailor. You won a lot in college. You obviously came to Old Dominion with talent. So, growing up in Annapolis, it's one of those 4 places in this country that you got access to some folks that you don't see a lot of ski racers coming out of Florida, I guess.
No. Yeah.
So what did Annapolis mean for you early on growing up?
It's a really good question. I mean, when I was growing up, a lot of the sailing talent was in Miami and in St. Pete because they were able to sail year round. And I never sailed year round. I basically, I would take kind of October to April off and just dying for things to go and do. And, I think Annapolis provided the sport in Annapolis is as much of a social sport as it is a serious racer venue, as opposed to, when you go to when you go out and you go racing. I mean, people do it for fun, but they kind of keep it in perspective. And the Wednesday night racing is as fun as the weekend racing, and people take it seriously. But it doesn't, it doesn't seem to want to, go above and beyond because people are doing it as their hobby and as their passion to be on the water. And for me, Annapolis was the perfect venue because it was just cold enough that it always kept the fire burning during the winter months. And I think when, I was fortunate growing up, I had a great sailing instructor in Jonathan Bartlett at the Severn Sailing Association. I had a great college coach in Casey Fulmer. Both these guys could see the rough piece of bark that I was, and were looking to kind of smooth it out with some 60 grit sandpaper as best they could. And but I can remember from the time that I was 8 years old on the West River in my laser, all I really wanted to do was go sailing, and that love of the sport evolved out of that. That was always first before the racing. And even now, when I'm home, I have an Alarian 28 that I share with a couple friends, and my best days are out on the water sailing with my kids.
I always want to know the road not traveled. What was your college degree at Old Dominion?
Education.
So if you weren't a sailor, would you be teaching?
Yeah, probably not very well. Because I want to be sailing, and then the motivation was, and in actuality, in fairness, ODU had an incredible education program because you could basically go for 5 years and come out of it with a master's in education. And so I didn't do the 5th year. I graduated, got my degree, and it was onwards and upwards from there. And went to work for Ed Reynolds up in Traverse City, and talking about a person that's been an incredible mentor, incredible friend. Every single decision in my sailing career has passed through him. And the beauty of that relationship is we could never do the other person's job, but he always supported me kind of in good times and in bad times. When I was too young and stupid to recognize that I was making a mistake, he allowed me to make it, and was there to pick up pieces and help me move forward. So, I'm always lucky in those relationships.
Well, the thread that goes to 6 degrees of separation, we just had a 50th high school reunion, and Ed and I went to neighboring high schools, and he's a couple years younger than me. And when I got the chance to talk to him, we're going to do an interview, I think, in the next couple of weeks, I had a chance to remind him of the 16-year-old Ed Reynolds that very few people know.
Yeah.
Versus the 21-year-old Ed Reynolds that moved to Traverse City and became, certainly a wonderful sailor and a great businessman.
Yeah.
So it is a small world, as they say.
Yeah, that's funny.
You've done a lot of conversations and a lot of things online about sort of the management of being a skipper. Does that educational background that you have, that teaching background, I got to believe that's got to be a part of that.
Yeah, but probably not in the context that you're asking. I mean, I can't think that how I act now was stuff that I learned in college. I
Okay.
mean, I was fortunate in the timing of our sport. I think I was really, really lucky. I graduated and went to work for Ed and kind of cut my teeth in the J24 class. And probably would be a bit remiss if I didn't recognize my dear friend Will Jeffers, who was the bowman on the Evita in 1998 when we won the J24 Worlds and actually won all the regattas that year. But Will passed away over the weekend.
Oh,
And
sorry.
yeah, no, but he's, thinking about the sport and kind of where we came from. And
Yeah.
somebody like Will was such an integral part of that. And, but it evolved from there to, the goal was always the America's Cup. And I happened to be lucky enough to, in 1998, when I won the J24 Worlds in San Francisco, Paul was organizing and John were organizing the America One program. And I had the opportunity to go to work for them. And that really started me on this pathway. And then you quickly look at how the sport of sailing evolved, and what Jeff Stagg and Tim Chambers did with the FAR 40 class and how that grew, and what Bruce Nelson and Greg Stewart did with the One Design 35 class and how that grew. And then you sprinkle in the America's Cup in and around some of those things. I was really lucky because I just happened to be in the right place at the right time with some of these things. And I worked for some incredible people, working for Ed, working for Jim Richardson, working for Alex Ropers, working for Doug DeVos, for Hat Falf. I mean, these guys are just, on top of just being, titans in their industries, they're all around good guys. And so that educational side of it that you're talking about, it comes from each one of those guys and each experience that you gain in working with them. But certainly the time that I raced on the Barking Mad and worked for Jim, that was a pretty pivotal part of my sailing development. And I worked for him for almost 14 years in the FAR 40 class, and that's the education that you're getting, learning how to interact with people and be a good teammate, representing the owners well, and covering those sides of it. I mean, that's truly the education that you're getting.
You come from a sailing family?
I do, but it's a cruising family. My dad had a Concordia yawl growing up, and so I'm the youngest of three, and my older brother and my older sister both sailed, but they kind of stopped after a period of time. My brother's claim to fame is I've never beaten him in a race, but he stopped when I was 11. So not sure it counts.
Okay.
But I do love racing with him now. He has a little Harbor 20, and we'll go out frostbiting together sometimes. And so,
when did you kind of know you wanted, and more importantly, could afford to be a pro?
it's always what I wanted to do.
But when did you know in your back of your head, was there an age that you knew that was there a sign, or was an opportunity, or a road that you knew that this was there a time in your life? It was 21 and the sun came up on a particular Tuesday?
No.
This was just always.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was always fascinated with the America's Cup, and probably a lot of that stems through the relationship with Gary Jobson, another fellow Annapolitan, and he'll always remind me, I'm still the only Annapolitan to win the regatta, Terry. So I got to help change that. And but he was a great mentor and has always been a great mentor since I was a kid. And when I was 13 years old in 1983, and he took me down to sail on Jubilation in one of the SORC warm-up regattas. And I mean, at that moment, I was already hooked. But if I needed another sign, that was definitely a big sign. And at the time when I came through college, I mean, sailmaking was kind of the pathway for that development. And so that's what led to my job with Ed.
That moves forward. So the America's Cup has always been sort of at the back of the brain. It's just, that's been the stepping stone, right?
Back and the front, the entire brain.
Okay. You've been in 5 of them. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And at this point, you haven't had a chance to ring the bell for all kinds of reasons. Is there still that hunger to want to find the top of the mountain?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's in 2000 having the opportunity to cut my teeth with America One and with Paul and John and that whole squad. Paul was fresh off of winning the Whitbread in 97 and 98. And obviously, somebody of John's Kostecki's skill set, anytime you get the opportunity to race with somebody like him, it's incredible because the guy is so good. So that was my entry into it, and we lost to Luna Rosa in the Louis Vuitton final 5-4, but that was an incredible experience. And then the next one with Dennis in 2003 was equally as fun and different and challenging. Having the opportunity to work with Dennis and with Tom Whidden and with Kenny Reed. Kenny's an incredible sailor, and he was one of these guys that I was always impressed. Having had the opportunity to work with Dean Barker and with Ed Baird and with Kenny. I mean, all three of these guys in their own right are incredible helmsmen, and Kenny was always it was fun to race with because he brought a bit of a hockey mentality to it. But that was a good experience because you also, I got to know Tom there as well, and clearly his place in America's Cup history is unquestioned. And then went to work for Team New Zealand in 2005, and we got to the match. We won a couple races in the match, and that regatta in particular stands out as that we raced better, but we lost to the faster boat. And that always, it kind of reiterates the mindset that the fastest boat will win the regatta. And 2013, had the opportunity to work for Torbjorn Tornquist at Artemis, and the foray into the foiling multi-hull and really the foiling boats there. That was something that I quickly realized then and there. That's like, man, this is a completely different beast. And the transition from a TP52 or a version 5 boat into that was, it was a different skill set, and that was equally as challenging as well. And then sat out 2017, and then 2021 came around, and I think in that program, the measure is the scorecard, and yet, I can look across and see a lot of things that we did really, really well. And, on the day, over 2.5 days of racing, it's unfortunate the entire program is measured on those 2.5 days, but that's reality too, because we're competitors. So, you take that experience going forward into AC 37, and we're fortunate to have the support of Doug DeVos and Hap Fouth, and the New York Yacht Club and everything that's behind that. And we're fortunate to have the lessons learned from AC 36, because as a competitor, the only way you get better is to continually push yourself and improve. And that's what we're going to do.
You guys have been pretty aggressive. I think you're the first boat to come out, if I'm not mistaken, for AC 37.
What do you mean?
Didn't somebody launch recently the first boat that's going to race in the next America's Cup, or am I mistaken?
Alinghi launched their boat. They had the opportunity to sail before September 17th because they're a new team. And so they bought Team New Zealand's first boat, and they're over in Spain sailing right now with it.
I just briefly we had Matt Cassidy on last week, and he was on a support boat. You guys had a pretty catastrophic accident in 2020 in New Zealand. 2021. Okay. Can you maybe walk through that? What's something like that's like? Because I don't think that happens very often.
I'm going to leave it in the past.
Okay, that's fine.
It's over with, and like I said, all these experiences you have to take forward and improve upon, and I'm confident that we've lived it.
Okay,
lessons have been learned, but at a certain point,
no, that's fine.
Need to move forward from it too.
Being in Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and then Plymouth recently, looking at some of the SailGP crews.
Yeah. Somehow.
Well, I'm an old football player, and I feel like when they, some of those teams are coming out, they look more like linebackers playing, NFL than they.
Yeah.
Sailors have gotten bigger and stronger. So my question is, we're moving in that direction. So it's a twofold question. What are you looking for in a crew member? And then the second part is being bigger and stronger, because at the end of the day, we've gotten rid of, with foiling, you've gotten rid of foredeck guys. So now everybody's a grinder if you're not the tactician or the driver.
Yeah. Well, and the AC-75 will be different than the Sail GP boat because we'll be powering the boat with our legs. And on an AC-36, we had 11 people on the boat and 8 grinders. And in AC-37, you'll have 4 cyclists and only 8 people on the boat to, in essence, produce the same amount of power, which is going to be hard because the boats will be slaves to the amount of oil that you can create to actuate the functions inside the boat. So what we basically been looking for is, guys that have strong lungs and high thresholds to lactic acid and are good, 20 to 25 minute athletes. So that type of testing you do over 60 minutes and you look for their peak power. You look at their 30-second average of what they do because, every 90 to 120 seconds, you're going to be doing a maneuver. And so the guys are going to have to spin up the oil pressure on the boat. And you're seeing what type of cardiovascular they have. And we've been really fortunate under the guidance of Baden Cashmore and Ben Day, who are 2 of the performance coaches. We've had a pretty rigid testing protocol. We have 1 cyclist, true cyclist, join the team, 4 rowers and 1 swimmer, and then we have a couple other athletes trying out. And this is on top of 3 sailors that have come forward that met the criteria and came forward from AC-36. But it's not a small criteria. I mean, at the end of the day, the weakest athlete right now from a non-sailing background is producing 420 watts over a 20-minute, and he'll have a peak power of about over a 30. He has a 30-second average of 1,500 watts with his legs, and that's a lot of effort. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. So right now, we have a baseline. Ben and Baden set up a great testing protocol for the guys to meet, and really we made the decisions on guys that came and are going forward based on their output and what they could actually do, sprinkling it with some sailors.
Pro cyclists and world-class, cyclists are a whole different body type than some of the sailors you see at this point. It's just, you don't see a world-class bike cyclist that's probably less than, they're 150, 160 pounds. They just happen to have, 40-inch thighs. It is a different, different profile.
Yeah. I think your point is right there. And so you have to think about it in the context of watts per kilo. And the cyclist that we actually hired is a sprinter. And so he's about 89 kilos, and we're looking for those athletes to put out between 5.5 watts per kilo. So the average guy is going to be about 95 kilos. So when you do it based on that type of formula, you very quickly you're getting into the high 400s, low 500s with their legs.
What have you learned from foiling that would help the rest of us just sail our monohulls? Is it apples and oranges?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Foiling, it's a little bit like saying what do you learn racing the Indy car when you're going down
okay.
Yeah, when you're driving down 75 in the state of Michigan.
Well, then I guess the follow-up question is, do you see foiling as the future, or is it maybe racing future, not necessarily sailboat future?
Well, I don't think foiling is something that you're going to get on the boat with your wife and you're going to go out and say, okay, honey, set the board cant at this angle and, put the mass rotation here and build at this apparent wind angle. And once it's up on the foil, bring the bow down and sail this apparent wind angle. And, it's just not, it's not very realistic.
Okay.
Where the boats are probably pretty good though, is that they, for somebody who wants to live a little bit on the edge and has the means to do it, you can go and do it. The systems inside the boat are great technologies. The batteries inside the boat are great technologies. And so these are the trickle down from the America's Cup into mainstream yachting will be more in systems and hydraulics than it will be in the actual boat. But I think it's probably not very realistic to say that the average person is going to go out and buy a foiling catamaran or a foiling monohull and enjoy the weekend terrorizing their family.
Well, at the highest levels, you can't be a sailmaker anymore. You got to be an aeronautical engineer. I mean, that's part of that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any capacity, all the sailmaking companies have evolved that way anyway. Be it North or Quantum or Doyle, I mean, they all have science-based people designing their sails, and so that's a strong move to begin with. And probably North was the leader of that, and Quantum followed suit, and then the Doyle guys hop in line there as well. And so I mean, to me, it's the better the engineer and the better the end user is, the better those relationships become and the better the equipment is.
Take us through the timeline briefly on where we are with AC-37. And if I'm mistaken, it's going to be in the Mediterranean.
Correct. So on September 17th, per the protocol, we're allowed to start sailing our AC-36 generation boat. So in the coming months, you'll see New York Yacht Club American Magic out in Pensacola Bay sailing through the fourth quarter of this year and into the first quarter of next year. And then based on shipping schedule, we'll take delivery of our first AC-40, and we'll get into some of that. And then July 1st through October 31st of next year, the only area that we can two-boat sail the AC-40s are in Barcelona. So we'll be there doing that. And, we'll be in Barcelona really with the 40s and with the 75 until April, May of 24. And then the race boat will show up and we'll get into the race boat. And then August, September, October of 24, we'll be into the Challenger Selection Series in the America's Cup.
Does the America Cup success, if we win, does that help? Paul Cairns been talking. We had talked to Paul a couple of weeks ago about sort of building this program back to sort of compete internationally, to get back to and money's a part of that discussion. The endowment he's trying to put together was very much like the U.S. ski team has put together.
Yeah,
he's working hard on that. I don't think the success makes or breaks his program, but we are a little bit behind internationally. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know, because when I go out and race internationally, we win world championships. Yeah, on the Olympic level, which is what Paul's focused on in the last probably 4 cycles, we have been behind.
Okay.
It's been really encouraging to see the success of the Olympic development program, the ODP program, and the kids that are coming through that, because that's our future. And I think under Paul's leadership, he has a clear vision of how these athletes should develop. Coach James Line, who coaches us on the 52 and on the 72 and was American Magic's coach in AC-36, he's taken on the role of help developing these athletes. He has a very clear vision in his head about how to execute on this. And so time will tell. If you look at the cycle of success, and this is my opinion, I wouldn't necessarily state it as a fact, but it's certainly my opinion that the U.S. had really successful Olympic teams when the playing field was relatively equal financially. And then the British and the Australian programs got ramped up financially, and they cultivated great athletes. New Zealand does a great job recognizing where they're strong and focusing only in those classes and not diluting the pool and spreading everything too thin, so they don't have enough financial resource. And they've got some great sailors. You can't help but be encouraged when you see the kids that are coming through the junior programs right now, and that coupled with some of the existing talent already that's out there that is going to continue on in the Olympic circle. You think about Steph and Maggie as Exhibit A. They've got 1 cycle under their belt, 1 Olympics under their belt. They had a good first go at the Olympics. They're going to be a strong contender in the next one through nothing else other than time, good resource, and being great sailors. But they also have the experience. And so I think it's really exciting to see how the U.S. Olympic team is going to evolve. And I think with Coach James and with Paul, you can talk to them and they'll give you very candid answers. We're strong in 3 or 4 classes and the others we're weak and we won't have a chance of medaling, but we'll have young athletes in those classes. So in 2028 in LA, they'll be contenders. And, I think like anything, the level of experience that comes with being at the games, as in any aspect of our sport, will help bring the U.S. to a higher level of competitiveness.
More kids in boats, also not necessarily being coached. A little more of the sandlot with kids that you talk to some of the old guys and they get into their small boats and they go. Gary Jobson talks about from going from Bennegat Bay to some distance, 15 miles away, to have lunch and sails back. That's just without having a support boat next to you, talking every inch of every way. I think U.S. sailing's numbers for even youth sailing is dropped a little bit over the past 5 years. So at some point you got to get butts back in the boats. I think that's pretty important.
Well, it's I have 3 kids and it's hard to get their attention.
Yeah.
And my love for sailing evolved out of sailing my laser and my dire dinghy on the summer day in the West River.
Yep.
And I never experienced a coach really until I got to college. And yet now we go racing. If there's not a coach there when I go racing, you have to really focus on your strengths and weaknesses internally on the team. When I race the J70 without a coach, that the fun part of it is it really forces the team to work hard. The hard part of it is that you're better with a coach than you are without. And so striking that balance, and I think like you're alluding to there, striking the balance with a 14-year-old kid is hard. And so you first need to develop the love of the game and the love of the sport before you try to ram something else down their throat.
Last couple of questions, and I do appreciate you spending some time with us. Your favorite boat to sail? Actually, your favorite boat to race?
I have 3.
Okay.
You can't narrow it down to just one.
Give me the 3.
I really enjoy racing the Bellamente because of the choreography and the dynamic of the team. It's very much like the version 5 boats that we raced in 2007.
Okay.
Love racing the TP52 because the racing is so close, and yet we're in the 14th generation of hulls and equipment, and it's amazing even when the boats are that refined, when you make a change and you can quantify the change, how rewarding it is to have that boat speed advantage. I love racing my J70 because it's still the purest side of the sport. And I've done a couple of regattas this year in 40 and 50 boat fleets. And, it just reminds you how great our sport actually is. Kind of to your point earlier, how do we bring people back into the sport, and there's some great classes, I think between the Melges 24 and you look at the Melges 15 that's evolving, and then you look, and which I think is just awesome to see, like how many great scow regattas are there and scow sailors are there that really we don't even know about.
Right.
And then the foundation of J boats and the J class and the class management under Chris Howell and some of the things that they do to kind of manage all these classes and as best they can try and promote the sport. I mean, each one of those classes has unique challenges, but they're great classes to go and race in. I don't highlight a moth or a kiteboard only because I don't have those experiences in it. And yet when you talk to Tom Slingsby or to Paul Goodison, who are some of our American Magic teammates, and Dan Morris and Lucas and Riley or Daniela, who's ripping it up in the kite. I mean, they're great sailers, and it's just a different discipline. And so that doesn't take away from it. It's just I don't have experience in it. And so for me, I probably a little bit more of the traditional bug, but the racing that I do, I love. And when I'm not racing, I love to be out on the Ilarion kind of cruising around.
Freshwater, saltwater?
Whatever.
Okay. Water. Got that.
Water. Just needs water.
And the absolute last question.
Yeah.
America's Cup victory would mean to you what?
Ooh. Relief.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's I don't really allow myself to think about it because it's an incredibly hard problem to solve. And so in 2007, when we were in the thick of the match and we were tied with a Lingy 2-2, and in race 5 we were around the top mark in the lead, and ended up with 3 spinnakers in the air off the boat as the Lingy sailed past us. You recognize this, not at the time, when you get a little bit further away from the regatta, you recognize the importance and the significance of where you are in the curve of the America's Cup. And right now, I think New York Yacht Club, American Magic, I think we're actually in a very strong spot. I mean, we've got some great sailing talent. We've got some great designers. Our limitations are we took a year off as we got ourselves reorganized and restructured. So, we're up against some formidable competitors, but I don't think about winning the regatta. I think about making sure that our team is in a spot to succeed. And, in October this year, when we get cranked up for the next 24 months, to make sure everybody's head down and focused on the task at hand, because, the opportunity is very real. It's a brutal game, as we learned in AC 36, and yet the margins between success and failure are small, and yet when you succeed, it always looks much bigger than what it is.
Yeah. Well, I hope at the end of 2024 you're standing on top of the hill. I think that would be
I'm with you.
for everybody, mostly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I appreciate that, Greg. And I think, like I said at the beginning, I'm incredibly thankful for the team that we have. I'm incredibly thankful for the support of Hap Fouth and Doug DeVos, because they're great guys. They're great people to work for, and thankful that the New York Yacht Club and we're all together. It's a solid start.
Best of luck the rest of the summer, and have a very successful winter. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you to Terry Hutchinson for spending some time with us. I think it was one of the better interviews we've done, and I really appreciate the time he spent with us. Up next is Nagy Mata. Nagy's going to talk a little bit about his trip around the loop, and I think you'll find it to be really insightful and pretty entertaining. So we'll be back with that in just a couple seconds. Welcome back. We're talking with Nagy Mata, and our traveling wanderer, if that's exactly the right term. You've embarked on a tour of the Great Loop. We had you on a few weeks ago, and right now I think I'm talking to you in Holland, Michigan, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. That's right.
Lake Makatawa, and that's quite a bit. You've gone all the way around the mitt, so to speak.
Yeah, it's been about 5 weeks so far, and it went pretty well. Pretty exciting.
So obviously, the first question is, we're keeping travel and keeping track of the travel, and we're going to show some pictures and some other things. What's been sort of the biggest thing that you went and scratched your head and kind of went, well, I could have done this better? What goes through your mind in that situation?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is I could have packed a little bit better.
Okay. Explain why.
I got all kinds of advice that before I did this, kind of like, don't overpack. And so and sure enough, I did. So I am looking forward to some family's going to join me here in a couple of days, and I'm looking forward to sending a lot of stuff back with them. So I did overpack, and it becomes a challenge, not just because of the logistics of the weight of the boat and everything, but just getting to stuff is just you got to be very deliberate. You got to put everything away and search for things. So yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge I've had so far.
Okay, be deliberate. And what is it that you overpack? Clothing, you cooking utensils, all of it?
All of it. I clothing, number one, cooking stuff. I got a lot of tools that I thought I would need, and I probably overpacked the tools. I got some spare parts, but I think I overpacked again, some oil and things like that I could, you could buy. You're not going out of in the middle of nowhere. You could stop and buy things, and there's Walmarts all over, kind of like. So it's not like you have to live in the boonies for a year or so.
You're not making a transatlantic crossing.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
We were talking earlier. You said you've gone up, obviously, now Lake Huron, and now you're over at the bottom of Lake Michigan, and sort of contrast those two, because as you mentioned, it's almost like two different countries.
They're both beautiful. I love them both, but I think there's big differences. I think the west side of Michigan strikes me as more touristy, more affluent, more vacation oriented. The eastern part of Michigan is just beautiful. It's just I don't want to say it's desolate. There's a couple of spots which are desolate if you choose to go there. Presqu'île comes to mind, but it's just a different kind of beauty. It's just a little bit more calm, a little bit more relaxed, so to speak, and it has its own beauty actually.
How's the weather been so far in 5 weeks? Have you had
The
a
weather's been great, actually. This summer, we haven't had a lot of rain. There was just one day where I was socked in, and it was in Ludington, I think, and it rained literally for about 8 to 10 hours, solid. But other than that, I really can't complain at all about the weather. It's been great. It's been a good summer.
Now, this may sound like a silly question, but we all live and have crossed the Mackinac Bridge 100 times. And I'm sure there's all kinds of Mac sailors who've gone underneath it millions of times. I've never gone underneath it with a boat. You did for the first time, right?
I did.
And we're both old. So it's extraordinary when something as simple as that becomes a highlight. And as we're watching it right now, there's a picture that I'm showing of you going under the Mac Bridge. So that's gotta be a cool feeling. It's a bucket list thing,
It
right?
is. It's pretty thrilling actually, and it was actually a little bit rolly that day. The boat was a little bit rocking, and but it was still a big thrill to do that, to see it from the bridge. And interestingly enough, I came across a boat, a workboat that was parked against one of the pilings, and they were doing routine inspections on the footings of the bridge. I ran into these guys the night before at the harbor, and I was talking to them, and they said, "Yeah, we're going out tomorrow." Kind of like they have to inspect the footings, and so that was pretty cool to know that at least that bridge is safe and sound. It's being maintained in a good way.
Was it DNR guys or was it a separate outside company doing the work?
No, it was a private company. They were private contractors.
I wonder why they wouldn't have. I mean, they have all kinds of people that work on the bridge. It's kind of not that it matters. That's cool. At least they're checking it. That's a cool
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Exactly. That's a good thing.
All harbors are not the same. As you mentioned, Presqu'île is as desolate as anything, but you kind of mentioned that you thought Frankfurt might be one of your favorites. So why?
Frankfurt, the harbor, the town is just a really neat little town. Everything is within walking distance. Grocery store, a lot of tourist traps as well, restaurants. But it's really a neat little town. It's got a very nice vibe to it. And there's a couple of marinas there, and it's got a great big harbor where a lot of boats were actually moored and anchored out too. So there was a fellow looper that was anchored out, and he'd come in, and we'd kind of walked down a couple of times and explored a little bit. So yeah.
All right. So in 5 weeks, how many nights on the hook and how many nights at a dock?
I did not do any nights on the hook yet. I'm actually looking forward to it. But yeah, I wanted to explore a lot of the towns in Michigan, and I thought it would be easier on the dock.
Are you nervous about going out on the hook for the first time? Just because you've never done that, or maybe you have, but
I've actually done it.
Overnight's a different thing than just kind of going out in the lake and putting the stick down, because when you fall asleep, you don't know if anchors can slip, and it's got to be in the back of your mind a little bit.
It is, but they have all kinds of apps that kind of monitor your anchor drag if it does drag, and it sends out an alarm. I'm not worried about it. It's just something new that I still have to do. I've anchored out quite a bit actually with my sailboat before.
Okay.
And I did anchor overnight with my sailboat before.
Okay.
So it's not totally foreign to me, but it'll be the first time on this boat.
My half-pound anchor for my 30-foot O'Day, I don't think it's going to be strong enough. I want to stay overnight. But anyway, bad joke. The folks you've been meeting, like you said, you met a fellow looper. Is it been as friendly as you thought it would be, or is it about what you thought it would be?
No, it's been great. Met a lot of the loopers have a tradition where you exchange cards, kind of like boat cards, where it has your name on the card, your email, your phone number, and your picture of the boat. Yeah, I collected about I don't know, 20 or so cards already just in Michigan. So it's been great. Everybody's been friendly. Everybody's been helpful. Yeah, no problems at all.
Of the loopers you've met, of the 20 or so, is it a wide variety of ages and lifestyles, or is it mostly retirees taking sort of putting a dream together?
I think a lot of them are retirees, but I'm actually met a couple of loopers from Australia, and they decided to kind of come to America and do the loop, and they bought a boat here, and so yeah, that was pretty cool. And there was a couple of at least 3 sailors that I met doing the loop. One doing a solo loop. There was a couple of husband and wife that are doing. They were tended to be more older cruising boats, but their sailors do it, and they're planning to take their mast down in Chicago and go through the rivers. So it's pretty cool.
One practical issue is: are you sleeping better? Or was there an adjustment, or has there been no adjustment at all?
No, I've actually been sleeping better, a lot better. Back home, I was like a really early morning person. I'd wake up at 5:30, but I'm actually sleeping until like 7 o'clock in the boat. So it's a very comforting thing. Yeah.
Could I point out to you that 7 o'clock in the morning isn't necessarily sleeping in to some of us?
It all
Right?
depends where you're coming from.
Right. No, I get that. I want you to know there's a few of us that have no problem still being in bed at 9 o'clock. So there are sort of night owls, as it were, from that standpoint. Weather hasn't been an issue either, right? I mean, I'm
No,
sure
it's been great. It's been today I'm heading down to I'm sorry, Douglas, Saugatuck area, and it's only a short hop, about maybe 10 miles, but it's a little breezy, but I'm not worried about it. It's coming a little bit out of the southwest, so it'll be okay.
Last question for this episode. You spent a lot of time planning this.
Yes,
Has it lived up to your expectations?
even better actually.
Why?
It's just it is a huge adventure. It is a huge you know, I like the sense of the adventure it brings, but plus I like the fact that it's every day you wake up and you kind of have to go by the flow. If the weather is bad, you stay in port. If the weather is good, you say maybe I'll leave a little bit earlier. You get to explore different places. So that I used to be a control guy, kind of like wake up in the morning, my day is laid out, and this sense of freedom on a daily basis is pretty cool. Yeah.
If I'm watching this, and I do have one last question, if I'm watching this and I'm thinking, okay, it's obviously late, middle August, but I'm gonna start planning this for next year.
Yeah.
Give me a dollar value of what I might consider saving. I'm going to be gone 30 days, 90 days, a year. What kind of dollar value per day would you put as a reasonable budget on a trip like this?
Well, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on, number one, the boat you have, because dockage is typically proportional to the size of the boat.
Right.
I've paid as little as $30 a night in Michigan, and as much as probably $70 a night.
Okay.
So I think average is around, for my boat size, is about $40 a night, 45, something like that.
So if you use 50 as just a flat fee as a docking issue,
yeah,
what's it cost you for food and those other kinds of things? Is it no different than it would be if I were at home?
Actually, it's compared to home, food is the same. That's not
okay.
gonna change. You probably eat out a little bit more than on the trip. Then it's just so easy. You pull into town, you find a place for breakfast or for dinner, and you just walk into town but you have to discipline yourself a little bit to kind of say you can't do this every meal. At least I do anyway. The other big expense is fuel for me, and again, my little boat is a lot better fuel wise than some of the bigger boats that I've seen on the loop, and actually not as good as sailboats. Sailboats do really well because even though when they're under power, they sip fuel.
Right.
Where I tend to probably use anywhere from around 3 gallons an hour of fuel, and some of these bigger boats use 12, 15 gallons an hour of fuel.
Okay.
So it does make a difference. Yeah.
All right. I guess this is the last question. We're kind of planning out the next 2 weeks. When do you plan to be anywhere near Chicago?
Chicago, I'm going to take my time getting to Chicago. There's a lock closure on the Illinois River, so I don't want to get there too soon. I want to time it so that I hit the lock after it reopens, and that's in mid-September.
Okay.
So I'm going to take my time getting to Chicago. I'm going to probably stop at South Haven, probably St. Joe, and head across the lake from there. But I'm going to take a few days at each port. I'll probably be in Chicago just a little bit after Labor Day.
Okay. When you get to St. Joe's, we'll maybe talk to you there. I've got family that are right there up past the second bridge.
Oh, that's awesome.
Earlier this year, we had a chance to interview a couple guys from the St. Joe Yacht Club.
Okay.
Who are just really cool guys. I'll get you their contact information. That's a great place to have a breakfast because that may be the best, I don't know, geographically positioned yacht club in the Great Lakes. It comes off the river, but where it sits, it's Westinghouse, not Westinghouse. Yeah, that's Westinghouse, right? For St. Joe's? I think it is.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's St. Joe's is really cool. St. Joe's is a really cool town.
Yeah,
anyway,
okay. I appreciate it.
Be safe. Thanks for the pictures. We will get this up pretty quick, hopefully early next week, and then we'll talk to you in maybe another 3 weeks.
All right. Take care.
All right, man.
Bye-bye. Problem.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking with Nagi 5-4. Hi, welcome back to 5-4. Hi, welcome back. We're having a real issue with me talking, so let me start again. 5-4. Hi, welcome back to another edition of I can't keep saying that because this is another God. All right. Hi, welcome back. We're talking with Nagi Mata. That's not even right.
That's good. That's good.
How do you say your first name?
Nagy. Just rhymes with Maggie.
I keep looking at that UI because it's not N-A-G-Y.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking with Nagi Muda. How do you say your last name? I just wanted to thank both Terry and Nagi for coming aboard the show and talking with us a little bit about their various backgrounds. And we wish them the best, and we hope that you enjoyed the interview. So for all the folks in back, we're Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman. See you next week.